So welcome to Rate Reviews, and I'm going to turn it over to Ben.
A big thank you to Sam for helping put all this on. A big thank you to the entire operations team at OSP. This has been amazing what they've been able to do yesterday and today. So a big thank you to everybody. I believe I've met most of the people in the room. We've got a good amount of people on the call as well. But my name is Ben Wright. I'm the Director of Research Core Development within the Office of Sponsored Programs. And we are lucky enough today to be joined by a couple of representatives from the Office of Sponsored Programs Cost Analysis and Compliance team. So Brian Bertelshofer and J.R. Pike. Many of you are probably familiar with these folks as well. Brian is the Director of the Cost Analysis Compliance Group. J.R., I'm going to have to look at his title, Senior Cost Accounting and Central Effort Manager within the Cost Analysis and Compliance Group. And they are the team that performs rate reviews for core facilities across campus. My counterpart, Megan Kraft, is the Interim Director of Research Core Strategy within the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research. She couldn't be here today, but she sends her warm regards. So today we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite topic, rate reviews. We are going to talk about some of the process improvements that the Cost Analysis and Compliance team has put into place. We're going to be talking about some metrics around the rate review process as a whole, what that looks like for the university. And then we'll get into some more details about completing the rate development worksheet and the operating plan documents as well. So we'll talk a little bit about the core support infrastructure here at UNC. There are a couple of different offices that provide support to core facilities across campus, and we oftentimes get questions about how these overlap and who does what and that sort of thing. So we've provided some information here and more detailed information on the next slide. But we have the Research Core Development team within the Office of Sponsored Programs and the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research. That's myself and Megan Kraft and Michael Akridge as well, who is in the building. He is our financial analyst. Then we have the OSP Cost Analysis and Compliance team. That's Brian and JR, along with Latoya Smith, Dave Coyle, and Felicia Dobson. This is the group that performs the rate reviews for core facilities. So we're going to talk about a lot of different teams here. Just keep in mind that the only team that can officially review and approve rate reviews for cores is the OSP Cost Analysis and Compliance team. Very timely walk in here. Next is the Office of Research Technologies, which is Chris Gregory and Kara Tlissold, who just walked in. For those of you not joining, for those of you online, her timing is impeccable. We also have the Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center. They have about 20 cores, 20 Lineberger and Lineberger adjacent cores. Holly Dressman was hired earlier this year to provide oversight for their core facility operations. And finally, we have the UNC College of Arts and Sciences, where Jim Cahoon is the Executive Director of Research Core Facilities there and oversees the core facilities within the College of Arts and Sciences. This next slide provides a little bit more information, and I'm not going to go into detail. There are a lot of words here, and they're really small. But in terms of our topic today, rate reviews, just wanted to reiterate again that the OSP Cost Analysis and Compliance team is the sole team that can review and approve rates for cores. That's who you'll need to submit your rate review documentation to, and who will review that and provide questions. RCD, the Research Core Development team, Lineberger, the College of Arts and Sciences, as well as the School of Medicine, Office of Research Technology. We are all happy to help you navigate through the rate review process. We can help you fill out the rate development worksheet and the operating plan. We can help you answer any questions. We can help you submit that to Brian and JR's team. And we can even help field questions from their team when they go through their review. Again, I said there are a lot of different teams and a lot of different names here. I would say that just if you need help with your rate review, just close your eyes and throw a dart at this screen. Well, this screen, and any of these folks are happy to help. We meet, if not weekly, then every other week, all of us, and in one fashion or another, and we're constantly talking about who's doing what and who's helping who. So if you don't know exactly who to reach out to, just reach out to one of us and we'll find the correct and appropriate contact to assist you. So let's talk about the financial reports in terms of how that relates to rate reviews. So many of you are already familiar. We released financial reporting tools for our core facilities back in July of this year. We released financial reports for over 100 cores, over 300 users on campus. And we really hope that this is, provides knowledge is power was kind of our thinking behind this, and can provide core directors and core staff, as well as business managers and accounting staff at the department level, better access and better visibility into the financial health of the cores. How that relates to this conversation is that we were able to incorporate into one of the financial reporting dashboards the information related to the current status of your rate review. So the cost analysis and compliance team utilizes a software called Smartsheets to track the progress of each one of the rate reviews that are happening. That allows us to track metrics as well. And that information is publicly shared in real time on the core financials totals dashboard. So when you're in your financial reports, click the totals dashboard, scroll down at the very bottom of the screen, and you'll see a chart with rate review information. This is updated. I think it's updated every 2 hours, but it's at least updated daily. So you can get real-time information as to the status of your rate review. If you're not going through a rate review currently, there are review dates listed here as well. So you can gain an understanding of when your next rate review is going to be. So instead of emailing somebody and asking, oh, what's the status of my rate review? When's my next rate review going to happen? You can check this out, and that'll provide up-to-date information, again, in real time for your rate reviews. I'm not only saying this because two of them are standing right here, but the cost analysis and compliance team really have done a lot of great work over the past year or so to streamline and improve the rate review process. They've been working really hard to improve turnaround times, decrease response times, and essentially decrease the overall time that it takes to complete a rate review. And they've done a really good job of this. Since October of 2022, they've completed 69 rate reviews. They had a big push to complete all of the rate reviews that were outstanding by the end of fiscal year 2023. They did a great job with this. Like I said, we have the ability to track metrics using Smartsheet, and the median time to complete a rate review is 92 days. We only expect that to improve moving forward, but a question that I get a lot, and I'm sure they get a lot as well, is like, how long does it take to complete a rate review? And now we can actually put our finger on that with these metrics that we've captured. Again, I mentioned and showed you that the rate review status information is available in the financial reports on that totals dashboard. And I would also say, check out the RCD webpage on the Greater OSP website. We've got a lot of good information there as it pertains to the rate reviews. The templates are there for the rate development worksheet and the operating plan. We've got FAQs that relates to all things core facilities, but in particular the rates. And there's also a guidance document out there to help with the completion of the operating plan. So check out the website. A lot of great information there. We're continuing to improve and enhance that. Sam and her team are hard at work on a completely new OSP website, and we'll have even more information once that goes live as well. I think that's all I had to cover. My sugar rush from dessert at lunch is I don't know if it's wearing off or kicking in. You guys can be the judge of that, but I will go ahead and turn it over to Brian to talk more about the rate review process.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Brian Bertelshofer. I'm the Director of Cost Analysis and Compliance in OSP, making sure that I also don't say OSR. So if I call me on it, if I do. So the two areas that I wanted to emphasize, in this presentation are looking at some of the things that we have done within OSP to improve the rate review process. And then the second area would be kind of to point out some of the pain points that we have when it comes to the rate review process, focusing mainly on things that we need to see on the rate development worksheet or in the operating plan for us to be able to complete the reviews. So the areas that we have under the process improvement, we have tried to concentrate on certain areas. And one of them, we've got, I've listed out 5 of them here, but the areas are improving communication with with RSC personnel, letting them know statuses, responding back quicker, submitting a proposal, we acknowledging the fact that we received the proposal, giving you a time frame when we're going to be able to do the review, all those things to make sure that we communicate on a regular basis so that during at the beginning of a rate review process all the way through that where the status is, and then and if you have any questions, you can come to us and we will respond back as quick as we can. What we also tried to do was to either modify or eliminate review steps to create a more efficient review process. And we'll get into the details a little bit more as we go along. We also looked at providing more of the information that you guys need up front when it comes to the rate development process. One of the things that we found out was, as I note here for fund balance purposes, we would give that information in the beginning. And because at the time in the past, it would take us so long to do the review, that data became old, and then we needed to update. So what we've just, as part of the process, is we've tried to identify and get you that information up front, but then not change it as we go along. Plus the data isn't going to be that old because our whole plan is to get these reviews done as quick as possible. With Sam's help, we created, Ben kind of brought the idea up, and with Sam's help, we created a fillable PDF on the operating plan. We had an old Word document that was hard to navigate and hard to fill out. And with the fillable PDF, again, trying to find things that we can do to make it easier on you guys for you to be able to submit a rate proposal. And then what we also tried to do was remove any duplicate effort that may be asked for on the various forms, on the rate development worksheet or on the operating plan, just to make sure that if you provide the information in one place, you don't need to duplicate it and provide it on some of the other data that we request. So as part of the communication, we are communicating out. We will be at some point here in the near future, letting everyone know, letting every recharge center know, as to start off with, to let them know that when we expect to do their next review. As Ben mentioned, as part of Smart Sheets, we've identified we need to go tweak this a little bit, and I'll get into it in a minute. We've identified when the reviews would happen on recharge centers. And approximately right now, we have about 110 recharge centers. And what we've tried to do is, because there's a 2-year rate review, either with policies or the government guidelines says you need to look at your rates once every 2 years. What we try to do is take that 110 recharge centers and spread them out equally over 8 quarters over a 2-year period. So our group would be looking at 12 to 15 recharge centers every quarter. And what we also try to do is not go to Lineberger and get 8 of them all at once. We try to spread all that out over the 8-quarter or 2-year period. What we try to do is communicate more in the very beginning, where we go to you and say, oh, knock, 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 it's time to do a recharge rate review. And what our updated process would be to go and contact the recharge center about 90 days before the review. And then we would give notifications throughout that 90 days all the way up to the expected due date. And that the end due date would be the beginning of the quarter that we're going to perform that review. So we would contact you 90 days prior to the quarter that you need to perform the review. So you have plenty of time to be able to prepare the documentation, gather the information that you need to be able to submit the rates to us, the rate proposal to us in time for us to be able to do a timely review within that rate review quarter. one of the things that we plan to do and offered up, it wouldn't be a requirement, would be to have some sort of an entrance conference, to maybe half an hour meeting with the Recharge Center personnel to say, okay, here's what our plan is over the next 90 days, or excuse me, back up on that. To let you know that, hey, during your rate development process, here's the information that we need. Provide locations of various where our templates are located, that type of thing, and then answer any questions that you have, and then give you an idea of what we plan to do when we actually do the rate review. That's something we're going to, offer, but especially if you're somebody who's done the rate review process a number of times, maybe you don't need that particular meeting, but it's something that we want to try to be able to offer to make sure that there's many different ways and options that you guys can come to us and be able to ask all the questions that you need to be able to make this process as smooth as possible. Excuse me, and as just to highlight here real quick, it's been noted before, there are numerous groups that you can go to either get help or answer your questions related to the development of the whole rate review process, and for that matter, with the Recharge Centers as a whole. And I just kind of had highlighted that here. Ben had already talked about it, so I'll just skip over that part. So on this graph, we were just trying to highlight the rate review timeline. And what we would do to start the process, we would send out a notification to the Recharge Center stating that, hey, it's time for your review is coming up. We're letting you know 90 days beforehand, so you have plenty of time to be able to pull all the information together you need, ask all the questions that you want to ask, and be able to fill out the documentation that we need to be able to do the rate review. And then we would send notifications at 60 days and at 30 days. And then I think we also have, I noted in my notes that we also try to do it at 14 and at 7 days as well. And then once you submit that rate review proposal, down here, once you submitted the proposal, we would notify you that, hey, we received them, and then there's an initial, what we kind of an initial review, a cursory review that we would go through and look for highlighted areas of information that we want to make sure that we have before we even begin the process. And I'll go over what the kind of information they're looking for as we go forward, or later in the presentation, excuse me. And then we would ask you for that information, and then let you know which of the cost analysts is going to perform those reviews, so that you would know who the particular cost analyst would be, who's going to be doing the review, sending you questions. And if you had any questions, you could contact that individual as well. And then our plan is within that quarter is to complete your review. So as long as we have everything in from as long as everything's good on the proposal and we have in the proposal within the appropriate time period, we should be able to get the review done within that quarter, within that 90 days, which would be, I would bet in some cases will be far earlier than the 90 days, but that would be our goal, would be to finish it within the review quarter that's designated to your Recharge Center. Once we receive the rate review documents, we would, as I mentioned before, we would communicate to the RSC, acknowledging the receipt of the review, and then giving you an estimated timeline of when the cost analyst would be able to start the review. And then that one of the analysts would also do a cursory review of your proposal to note, to check for certain information that we would need to do the review. And some of those items are listed here, making sure if you are going to claim depreciation that we have all the information related to the capital equipment that you've listed, especially the decal number. If we don't have a decal number, it's very hard for us to figure out, to do the depreciation calculation, identify the asset within Connect Carolina, and find out all that information to do the depreciation calculations. For you to identify or provide the proper information that we need to know about for the subsidies, noting that information within the excuse me, the operating plan, the RSCOP, and then in the operating plan itself, that all the questions are answered within the operating plan, and that the information that you've provided in there corresponds to the information that's in the rate review. And an area of importance is definitely the units of measure that you've identified in the operating plan match what you're using in the rate development worksheet, and then any of the operating levels that would tie back to the information that the operating levels used in the rate development worksheet would match up with what you stated within the rate development within the operating plan. Also, in the rate development worksheet, there would be a cursory review to make sure that you've allocated all the expenses out to all the proposed rates. We do run into the situation a number of times where the dollars aren't all allocated out to the various rates. And then identifying the subsidies. And then with the equipment maintenance contracts, identifying the matching up equipment. And it doesn't have to always be this case, but for the most part, if you're claiming equipment, if you want to include the equipment maintenance costs in your proposal, it most likely would match up to a piece of equipment that you've identified under the equipment tab under the rate development worksheet. We get to the end of the rate review, and what we try to communicate to you at the end is there'll be a final communication that will be sent to the appropriate departmental and recharge center personnel, noting that, hey, the rate review is done, and then submitting copies of all the appropriate documents, getting the signed off rate development worksheet, operating plan, the calculation of the fund balance that was used within the development of the rates, and then if necessary, a memorandum of agreement. What we also try to note in the communication is that the template communication that we have references the various policies that you would need to follow during the next 2 years. And then it also notes that when we expect to do the next review, so it would be, hey, we did a review from April to June of 23. We're going to come back and do another one 2 years from now in April to June of 25. There's also notation within the communication that talks about if you need to do an off-cycle review for various reasons, if your volume has dropped off, if you have supplies that you're using, or personnel costs have gone up, whatever the case may be, whatever you would potentially need, that would be a material impact to your rates, and of course to your bottom line in your recharge center. We don't want you to wait 2 years or a year or whatever. If it's something that we need to address right away, it's what we would call an off-cycle review, and we're more than happy to do those. But we try to do those as quick as we can, as long as there's not any major changes to the structure of what was proposed in the original rate review. And then we remind you that if you're going to purchase any capital equipment on a recharge center chart field, OSP must sign off on that before you do it. And we want to make sure that, because you want to make sure that you have a proper amount of depreciation put aside that you can use to purchase capital equipment, or that you have a surplus of you have excess revenue from external sources. The excess revenue from external sources is available for you to buy the equipment as well. So we also note that in that correspondence as well. Some of the things that we tried to modify or eliminate as part of the review steps. And I'd mentioned this before about the fund balance, that we try to the best of our ability to eliminate that recalculation of the fund balance through the rate review process. For many reasons, because we're going to shorten that review process, we will calculate that fund balance once, and then it will be fixed throughout the life of that review. And the reason is we don't want to go through multiple changes, get to the very end, and we need to update your fund balance, and your rates change enough that it impacts the decisions that you've made throughout the review process that you have been going through. And so that's just one item that we want to make it a little bit easier, so that you're not So the information that you receive is not changing multiple times as we go through the process. What we've also tried to do is eliminate supervisory review within OSP. And limit to when a what we call a secondary review or a review before the questions that would go out to the recharge centers, the initial questions, is to eliminate some of that, those steps, especially if we have seasoned folks or employees with team members within OSP that have done a number of these reviews. With JR and I would have the comfort and reliance on them that they identify and note the proper questions that we want to address during the review. Sometimes it would be hard to bypass that secondary review if we had somebody that was new within OSP. And then if a group has a large percentage of their total effort, of their total volume is related to external sales. And then if you're proposing depreciation or subsidies, in some instances where I would want to, or JR would need to look at that to make sure that especially with the depreciation was calculated and laid out properly. What we've also tried to do when it comes into the very end of the memorandum of agreement is to eliminate that, especially if it's a recharge center that has been run by the same group of people over multiple years. If we have a memorandum of agreement that's signed by the same individual that's responsible this time around, there's no reason to sign the same document again. The responsibilities are still the same, so we would eliminate that step as well. As I also mentioned before, and thank you, Sam and Ben, for helping with this, but the operating plan is now on a fillable PDF. And it's definitely a lot user-friendly. It has drop-down questions. So depending on how you answer one question, it will feed you other questions that you would need to, it would feed you other questions that you would need to answer based on how you answer that intro question. We've, as I also mentioned before, that we tried to eliminate duplicate information that we asked for either here and on the rate development worksheet. Ben and his group put together a wonderful instruction document that shows you how to takes each section and tells you how to fill out that information related to the what information that we need in the operating plan. So if you follow along on that document, it should help you out immensely. And then you can do electronic signatures. Would be our preference, not hopefully the ink signature is a thing of the past. And then and then I just note where you can get that the fillable PDF on the Research Core Development webpage. Excuse me. The next areas I wanted to focus on were some of the pain points that we identify when we're doing the rate review. And to start off with is related to the operating plan. There are 3 questions related to the services. The first one is related to the services outside the university. And we ask you to list out your major competition and what rates that they charge, explaining and then comparing what your services are compared to what they offer. And I do see this a fair amount where somebody will come in and say, hey, yeah, Duke does this as well, but we focus down this path, a type of service, but Duke really focuses down path B. So there's really not even though our titles are the same, our service levels are completely different. That's the type of information that we want to know. And then like I mentioned there, you'd want to compare your rates to your competitors' rates. Also I'll show you this as we go along here. Questions 5, F, and G ask you about any outstanding revenue that you have billed for but not received from from your activities for external, like mainly it'll be external activities, because we want to give you credit for that work you've done. And then likewise in question 5G, is there anything that you've ordered, received, and you have the invoice in hand, but you haven't paid that bill yet? So obviously it's not in Connect Carolina to show as a total expenditure as well. So we want to know that. So when we're calculating what we call the true fund balance, we would take those numbers into account when we calculate what your true surplus and well, not and or, but your true surplus or deficit, depending on how you're operating. So going back to the question, the section 5, one of the tables that it seems to be a little confusing for folks is where we ask you to lay out in a percentage form, where does your revenue come from, internally and externally. So we also ask you, when it comes to the internal revenue, where is it coming from? Is it within your department or other departments within the university? And is the source, when it comes to sponsored research, is it federal or state or other, or of course, then if are you actually doing is a startup funds or something like that being charged as well for a particular faculty member, and then external to the university as well. Unfortunately, this is not it's a manual calculation process, so it doesn't do the calculations for you to determine out what the 100% part is. But basically, the two items below, internal to the university, should add up and be the number that's at the top. And then external university is pretty self-explanatory. And then bringing the totals down to the bottom, and again, unfortunately, it's all manual calculation. So another area that I had mentioned briefly of kind of the pain points is the providing of any subsidy or any support that you receive. And then again, with the drop-down questions, if you happen to receive either non-sponsored support from the Cancer Fund, or if you're using grant money, like in number 4, if you have a sponsored project that's supporting your recharge center, we want you to provide that information. And so if you check those boxes, then you would get drop downs. As an example, this first one is for if you get non-sponsored support, if it's the Cancer Research Fund, or if you're using departmental funds, we want you to identify that by chart field what is being provided as a subsidy for that. And then when you're in the rate development worksheet, then we talk about the dollars that are being provided, and then what that subsidy is covering. Is it covering personnel? Is it covering supplies? Is it paying for a maintenance contract? That type of thing. And then for the same type of information is asked for when it comes to a grant or center support grant, like at Lineberger, they have a center support grant where we ask you to provide that chart field and what's the time frame that they're providing, what time frame is being provided, and of course who's the PI on that particular award, and then just a brief explanation of the data that's being provided. Excuse me, the support that's being provided. So on the rate development worksheet, some of the pain points that we definitely run into a lot is on the equipment depreciation tab is the equipment's listed out, but we don't get decal numbers. If we don't have a decal number, it's hard for us to go find out to verify the information within Connect Carolina and be able to then do the depreciation calculations, which were then those costs would be included in your rate if you're actually doing it. Some recharge centers choose not to include that, but it's still very helpful for us to identify the decal number, because we do use the same information when we develop the F&A study. And that decal number, we definitely need to be able to flag the appropriate equipment in the F&A study, without getting into the details of why I need that information when we do the F&A study. But it basically comes into, can we include it in our rate or F&A rate or not, the depreciation. Getting a correct description of the equipment so that we can verify it to the records in Connect Carolina, and then getting the location of the equipment correct as well. And another reason goes back to the F&A study that we can verify the location of the equipment, because we want to make sure that we tie the equipment back to the appropriate space, and then all that factors into development of the rate of the F&A rate. As I had mentioned this briefly before, but under maintenance contracts, we also, if it is truly the case that you're providing your equipment, the maintenance contracts are on a piece of equipment, what we want to do is tie if possible, tie that equipment maintenance contract to equipment listed on the equipment depreciation schedule under the REOP number 6. And then the external operating levels, we also on the main worksheet, the main rate calculation worksheet, we what we do is check what's provided there and does it match up, does it jive with what is being presented in the operating plan. We do definitely check that to make sure that what's been presented in there matches with what you expect to do going forward within the recharge. And that finishes my part of it. Ben's going to come back up and kind of talk about a few tips for completing certain sections of the rate development worksheet.
Thanks, Brian. And again, just to highlight and shout out the cost analysis and compliance team for the great job that they've been doing on working through some of these process improvements and streamlining the rate review process. I know that we're all very excited about it, and we hope that you guys are very excited about it and hope that you can really see some real impact on your side too. So just a big kudos to you guys, JR and Brian. So the next portion here, there's a lot of information, and I know we want to keep about 10 minutes at the end for questions and answers. So I'm just going to breeze through this really quickly, but what's on the next 10 or so slides is information that will help you fill out the rate development worksheet and operating plan. More than a step-by-step guide, it's really a map to help you find the information that's needed to complete the rate development worksheet. So if you're looking at the payroll tab and you're like, where do I find this information? Well, this information is provided here for you. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on these. I'm going to breeze through it pretty quickly, but just note that we're going to publish this presentation after the symposium, and you guys will have access to that. We also plan to turn this into a guidance document that we'll formally publish on our website as well. So you'll have information there. If there's anything that you guys would like to see incorporated into this, let us know, and we'll certainly do that based on your questions that you ask here as well. So again, I'm just going to breeze through this. A couple of common questions that we get. One is regarding the annual operating level, and that's the number of units expected to be provided of each rate for 1 year. So that's not for the 2-year period, but that's for the 1-year period. Obviously, this is going to be an estimate based on prior year usage, but take things into account about the future as well. So if you know of a PI that's going to be awarded a project and use your core, you may want to increase your annual operating level accordingly. And obviously, this must align with the personnel effort that's charged to the core as well, which brings us to salaries and benefits, which is the second tab there on the rate development worksheet. You can check Infoport if the personnel in the rate development worksheet report directly to you. You can check in Infoport to get updated salary amounts. If you're going to hire somebody within the next couple of months, you can add them here as a TBA or TBN and use an estimate for their salary as well. Material supplies, other direct costs. There's 2 tabs here, REOP 3 and REOP 5. REOP 3 is meant for supplies and consumables, where REOP 5 is meant for other direct costs, such as software, computers, memberships, travel for your core staff to go to conferences and things like that should be included here. I mentioned the financial reports. When you are thinking about estimates of what to include on the rate development worksheet, you can look back at your prior year's financial data using the financial reports to get an informed estimate of what my supplies expenses should be, or what did I charge for software in the previous fiscal year. Use that coupled with your knowledge or your expectation of what's going to happen in the future, and you can estimate some of these amounts that go on the RDW. In terms of maintenance contracts, everybody's pretty familiar with maintenance contracts, but the information that will be needed to complete the RDW for maintenance contracts can be found on the PO that was used to purchase the maintenance contract. Equipment, there is a laundry list of things that we could talk about when we go over equipment. But if any of you are completing the rate development worksheet and have questions about equipment, or you don't know the asset tag number, the PO number, or anything like that, feel free to reach out to us and we're happy to help you dig that information up. Equipment depreciation, everybody's also familiar. You may or may not include this in your rates. You can't include this in your rates if the equipment was charged with sponsored project funds. But you also get to, if you do include equipment depreciation in your rates, you get to allocate that across the rates according to the usage of equipment. So keep that in mind as well. I know Sam's got a 5-minute flag over there that she's really reaching for. She's excited to wave that flag. Only a couple more sides. Subsidies. So subsidies are financial support from a non-core source. There's kind of two types of these. One is a general subsidy, which would lower your internal break-even rate. That applies to anybody using your core or any internal member using your core. There are also subsidies that only apply to certain members. So this is subsidies that result in kind of a member rate. And last but not least, your operating plan. As Brian alluded to, we released a new PDF document for the operating plan earlier this year. There's also a guidance document that goes step by step, question by question on how to complete the operating plan. And you can also use your previous operating plan from the last review as a guide. Obviously, we want you to update that where it's appropriate, but feel free to use that as a guide as well. And as always, if you don't take away anything from this presentation, take away that you can contact Research Core Development. You can contact School of Medicine Office of Research Technologies. Obviously, you can contact the Cost Analysis and Compliance team if you guys need any assistance or have any questions with anything. So please feel free to reach out. We'll be happy to help. I know I rushed through that, but we're going to publish this on the website, so you'll have access to all of the nitty-gritty details there. Do we have any questions? I spoke way too fast to get through that for nobody to have any questions with the time left. John Shea asked if there is an automated report to come up with the depreciation amounts for equipment that is charged to the core. And right now there isn't. The best option in order to calculate your current accumulated depreciation is going to be to reach out to the Cost Analysis and Compliance team, and they will calculate that for you as part of the fund balance. And to their credit, the Cost Analysis and Compliance team has done a great job at increasing or decreasing the turnaround times. For those special requests that you have like that, off-cycle reviews, calculating the fund balance, equipment depreciation, they can get those turned around pretty quickly. Anybody
Questions?
else?
Okay, do we need to somehow in the rate revision show you guys that we are have charges that pass through? Like if we have to order a consumable to complete a project that's not typically something that the core utilizes, is there an appropriate way to notify you guys that that's a pass-through expense?
Yeah, if it happens on a regular basis, what we do is dedicate one of the rate columns just to note that this particular supply is going to be passed through because it's got a volatile, whatever the reason is, that we would just note. There wouldn't be a rate calculator, just say that this particular supply is passed through at cost. And then what you're responsible for if internal audit or a sponsor audit came knocking and said, justify that charge, you as the recharge would be responsible to provide that particular PO, whatever it is that says, yes, this $15,000 charge that hit that sponsored award, here's why we passed.
Any other questions? Do we have any in the chat?
The rate reviews are going to be perfect. That was
Next year
basically
it's
the
going to be
comment.
smooth sailing.
We had a lot of discussion about external sales revenue or external
Sales
the other
reserve.
sales reserve. Yeah, not revenue, reserve. And keeping track of that. But from what I'm hearing, you're saying you can't put that in a separate chart field string either. So what works best for y'all on how we should track that?
You don't need to give that to us. We've identified, or as part of the fund balance, we do that calculation, to determine what portion of your surplus is representative. If you've been putting aside depreciation, or if you have external revenue that hasn't been used in operations, that's available. So that's part of our fund balance calculation. So, I mean, it'd be great if you're keeping track of it yourself, but that's also the calculation that we do. And we can do it at any time. If you're just charging the 55% and 55.5% burden on top of your external, nothing you need to do. But if you happen to have customers externally that are paying beyond that, then you need to let us know to make sure that we divvy out even more to you, and that's only fair to you. Well, I mean, and we do ask those questions, but it may not be blatantly obvious to say, we are going to charge market rate, which is well beyond, we're quite certain is well beyond. Then we would know then right away that we need to take those extra steps.
So that's something we've had a discussion about, adding a question to the operating plan. It basically says, tell us anything that we would need to know to be able to provide you with an accurate fund balance, whether that be something that's encumbered or maybe your maintenance contracts. You just paid for all of those in the previous month. And now we're doing the review next month. So your fund balance looks really low, but really you're going to recharge that through the next year. So we would take that into account too. So we have discussed that, and I think that's a change that we're going to make on the operating plan at some point here in the near future, so that you could provide us with that information ahead of doing the review, and we could go ahead and.
There have been some recent questions that have come up about encumbrances and making sure that we include when we do our fund balance analysis, that we include some encumbrances, and we try to do that. And it was pointed out to me and recently from a review that we did that we probably didn't look at the numbers correctly. And so that be just identifying those types of things, then we could be able to sit down with you and understand more of, just like JR had mentioned, hey, we just bought $100,000 worth of maintenance agreements. So yeah, our fund balance is low, but we do need reality over time. You're right. We do a fund balance snapshot at that particular point in time. But we definitely do want to incorporate things that you know of it either just happened or are going to happen when we do that calculation. That's why we called it true fund.
And a shameless plug, we held a couple of workshops earlier this year about how to calculate external sales reserve, and a recording of that presentation is on the RCD webpage.
Yep. And the time flag has been noted. So if you have any other questions, you can email JR or me or Ben, and we're happy to address those. And then as part of the follow-up of the symposium, Sam and her team are going to provide us with questions that we'll respond back to, that will be posted out there with the presentation. Thank you very much.